You ever notice how some men immediately straighten up when a certain woman walks into the room? Not because she's loud, not because she's aggressive, but because she walks in like she knows who she is. And more importantly, like she's not afraid to walk away. That's not attitude. That's power. That's presence. That's the silent language of boundaries that command respect without demanding it. And let me tell you something real. If you don't define what you stand for, you'll be reduced to whatever others can get away with. Respect isn't something you ask for with words. It's something you command through energy, clarity, and action. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're gates. Gates that only open for what aligns with your values, your peace, your self-worth. And yes, real men, the ones with integrity, strength, and depth, they respect those gates. They recognize the strength it takes to say no, to hold the line, to walk alone rather than compromise your standards. The first boundary you've got to draw is around your time. Time is not just hours on a clock. It's your energy, your presence, your life. Stop giving it freely to people who only call when they need something. You think he doesn't notice that you always pick up, that you always say yes. He does. He notices. And so do others. The moment you start putting a premium on your time, others start treating it like it's valuable. Don't always be available. Be intentional. When you do show up fully. But when you need space, take it without guilt. That's not cold, it's clarity. The second boundary is emotional access. Just because someone's curious doesn't mean they deserve your vulnerability. Your softness is not for sport. It's not entertainment. It's earned. Some men will try to pull you into a false sense of safety just to unravel your layers. Not to understand you, but to control you. You want to earn a man's respect. Let him work for your emotional trust. Let him show consistency over time. Don't pour your soul into someone who hasn't proven they can carry it with care. Guard your peace like it's gold. Because it is. Next, you've got to set a boundary with how you allow people to speak to you. Language is powerful. Tone is powerful. A man who speaks to you with contempt, sarcasm, or passive aggression is testing your limits. And if you laugh it off, brush it aside, or shrink when it happens, you're training him that disrespect is tolerable. You stop that with one sentence: I don't allow people to speak to me like that. Not please, or maybe. Direct, calm, clear. You don't need to yell. The strongest people don't raise their voice. They raise their standard. The fourth boundary. This one gets overlooked, but it's about your body, your space, your touch. You do not owe anyone physical access to you because you're dating, because you're married, or because it's expected. Your body is yours. And when you say no, it's not up for debate. A man who respects boundaries will stop when you say stop. He won't guilt you, pressure you, or pout like a child. And if he does, that's your red flag. Don't ignore it. A woman who honors her own body teaches how sacred it is. And trust me, men respect women who respect themselves. And finally, the fifth boundary, the most powerful one of all. Your standards. Don't lower your standards to fit someone's comfort zone. Don't compromise your non-negotiables because you're afraid of being alone. You're not hard to love. You're just hard to manipulate. The right men will rise. The wrong ones will fade. Let them. Respect starts when you stop explaining your worth and start embodying it. A woman with standards isn't intimidating. She's just unwilling to live below her value. That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. You want to be respected by men. Don't chase it. Don't beg for it. Don't adjust for it. Become the type of woman who is grounded, unshakable, and unapologetically herself. Men respect what they can't control, and they honor what they can't corrupt. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about protecting what's sacred inside of you. So hold the line, raise the bar, and never shrink for someone else's comfort. Because the moment you start honoring your own boundaries, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. Time is your most precious asset, and once it's gone, you don't get it back. That's why how you spend it, and more importantly, who you give it to, says everything about how you value yourself. Let me make something very clear: when you are always available, always saying yes, always dropping everything the second someone calls or texts, you're not being nice, you're being accessible. And accessible doesn't command respect. It breeds entitlement. If a man knows that you'll show up the second he whistles, Why would he ever value your presence? You've shown him it's easy to get. No effort required. But when you protect your time, when you're deliberate about who gets your attention, everything shifts. Suddenly people realize your time means something. It's not just floating around waiting to be claimed. It's scheduled, it's earned, it's prioritized based on what matters to you. And men, they pick up on this faster than you think. The man who once called you at 10 p.m. to hang out, last minute will either learn to make plans ahead, or he'll disappear. Either way, you win. Because a man who respects himself will recognize and admire a woman who respects her own time. He won't see it as rejection. He'll see it as a challenge to rise to her level. You need to stop filling every gap in your calendar with people who don't fill you. Stop proving your worth by being available. You don't need to hustle for love or friendship. You are not on call for anyone's convenience. When you set that boundary and protect your time like the limited, valuable resource it is, something amazing happens. People stop assuming, and they start asking. They stop expecting and they start appreciating. And that is when respect is born. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it in the way you treat yourself. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional world. Just because someone asks how you're feeling, or says they want to understand you, doesn't mean you hand over the keys to your soul. Let me tell you something people won't say out loud. Some men want your vulnerability not to connect with you, but to control you. They want your story, your softness, your struggles not because they care, but because they want to use it, to keep you tethered, to play the rescuer, the fixer, the one you need. But a woman with wisdom knows this. Vulnerability is earned, not owed. You don't open up to every man who listens for 10 minutes. You don't spill your past just because he shared a piece of his. Emotional access should never be instant. It should be tested. You watch how he shows up when it's inconvenient. You observe what he does with little bits of truth you offer. Does he hold them with care? Or does he twist them, joke about them, weaponize them when he's angry? That's your signal. That tells you everything. Because a man's character is not revealed in the highlight reel, it shows up in the quiet moments when no one's watching. Real men, grounded men, strong men, they don't need to rush your emotional walls. They're not intimidated by your silence. They're patient because they understand that what's sacred takes time. So don't let the pressure to open up make you hand over what should be guarded. When a woman holds back her emotional world until a man has earned it through trust, consistency, and care, that doesn't make her cold. That makes her wise. That makes her someone a man respects. Not because she shared everything too soon, but because she valued herself enough to wait. The way someone speaks to you reveals exactly how they see you. Tone is everything. Words carry weight. And when a man uses sarcasm, passive-aggressive remarks, or subtle digs disguised as jokes, he's not being playful. He's testing your boundaries. He wants to see what you'll tolerate. How far he can push before you push back. And if you laugh it off or brush it aside, thinking it's not a big deal, you just taught him something dangerous. That disrespect comes with no consequence. You want to earn respect. You correct that behavior the first time it happens. Not with yelling. Not with drama. With calm, unshakable certainty. You look him dead in the eye and say, "I don't allow people to speak to me like that." That's it. No long explanation. No emotional monologue. Just the line, clerm, final, and the way he responds will tell you everything you need to know. A man who respects women will adjust. He'll take note. A man who gets defensive or mocks your boundary, that's not a man. It's a boy in grown-up clothing trying to manipulate his way around accountability. You train people how to treat you. If you let something slide once, it becomes the new standard. And don't fool yourself into thinking tone doesn't matter. Because it does. Disrespect is rarely loud at first. It starts quiet, disguised as humor or frustration, but it escalates when unchallenged. So when you set that verbal boundary early and consistently, you send a powerful message: I value myself too much to be spoken to like I'm less. And men who are worth your time will hear that loud and clear, and adjust accordingly. Your body is not a bargaining chip. It's not a favor. It's not something anyone is entitled to. Ever. I don't care if you've been on 10 dates. I don't care if he says all the right things. I don't care if you're in a long-term relationship or even married. The moment you feel pressured, coerced, or guilted into doing something physical that you're not comfortable with, that is not love. That is manipulation. And if you think staying silent keeps the peace, let me be clear, it doesn't. It teaches him that your comfort is negotiable, that your body is available for the taking, that you'll tolerate discomfort to avoid conflict. And that is the fastest way to lose not just his respect, but your own. A real man, a grounded man. A man who understands worth. He will never make you feel small for having boundaries around your body. He won't huff and puff when you say no. He won't pout or guilt trip or say, "You used to." He'll pause. He'll respect it. He'll see that your body is sacred to you, and that means it becomes sacred to him. That's the standard. And if he can't meet it, you let him walk. No begging, no explaining, no watering yourself down just to be enough for someone who doesn't even deserve your time, let alone your skin. You are not cold for having physical boundaries. You are not too much. You are clear. And clarity is strength. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to explain your no. You just need to mean it. You draw that line once, and you enforce it like it's law. Because it is. Your law, your body, your space. And any man who can't honor, that doesn't deserve to be in your presence, much less in your arms. When you lower your standards just to keep someone in your life, you're not gaining a partner. You're losing yourself. Every time you bend your boundaries to accommodate someone who hasn't earned their place, you chip away at your own value. You convince yourself that being understood means being accepted as less. You settle for crumbs when you were meant for the whole table. But let me ask you this. Why are you tolerating what doesn't align with your worth? Because you're afraid of being alone. Because you think there's not better out there, or worse. Because you think you can't do better. Let me tell you something with brutal honesty. The most dangerous place you can live in is comfort with disrespect. It's subtle, it's slow. It starts with small compromises. You tell yourself, it's okay, he's just busy. When he ghosts your calls, you excuse, he's stressed. When he talks down to you, you say, no one's perfect. When he violates your trust. And before you know it, you're knee-deep in a life that doesn't feel like yours. You're performing a version of yourself to be palatable. Quieting your voice, reshaping your needs, softening your power, so you don't seem too much. But here's the truth, and you are not too much. Your standards are not the problem. The problem is you keep offering premium access to people who haven't paid the price of consistency, integrity, and growth. You are not here to raise a man. You are not here to heal what he refuses to fix. You are not a therapist for the emotionally immature or a reward for potential. You are the standard. And the moment you believe that, you start attracting people who rise instead of shrink. A man who's serious about you won't see your standards as an obstacle. He'll see them as an opportunity to become better, to show up stronger, to match the energy of a woman who knows her worth. He won't complain that you expect too much. He'll appreciate that you hold him accountable to become his best. And if he walks away because you refuse to settle, let him. Let him walk. He just did you the favor of removing himself from a future he wasn't built to handle. That's not a loss. It's divine protection. Standards are not a wall to keep love out. They are the filter that keeps toxicity from getting in. And they're not just about how others treat you. They're about how you treat yourself. When you set standards, you're telling the world how you expect to be valued, respected, and loved. And if you can't enforce them, no one else will. Because people don't follow what you say. They follow what you allow. So when you say, I won't tolerate dishonesty, but you stay after catching him in a lie, you just told him lying is survivable. When you say, I need communication, but you keep answering his messages even when he disappears for days, you just told him that being inconsistent is okay. You're not setting standards at that point. You're setting patterns. And patterns are powerful. They train people how to treat you. So if you want to be respected, you have to be willing to walk away from anything that disrespects you. Even if it's wrapped in attraction, attention, or temporary affection. Because if it costs you your dignity, your peace, your sleep, your self-worth, it's too expensive. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice the parts of yourself that make you whole. Real love honors your boundaries and sees your standards as sacred. So many women confuse tolerance with strength. But strength is not about how much you can endure. It's about how fiercely you protect your soul. It's not about staying when things get hard. It's about knowing when hard is just toxic disguised as complicated. There's a difference. A relationship will challenge you, but it should never diminish you. There's no glory in being the woman who held it down while being torn apart inside. That's not love. That's slow self-destruction with a smile on your face. You need to stop seeking approval from people who haven't even earned access to your life. You need to stop explaining why your standards matter. Let them be confused. Let them call you difficult. Let them say you're picky. Let them walk. The ones who truly see you will never ask you to shrink. They will never make you feel like you're asking for too much when really, you're just asking for basic human decency. The man who is right for you will not only meet your standards, he'll thank you for setting them, because it helped him grow too. Here's something else no one tells you. Setting standards won't make your life easier. It will make your life cleaner. It won't stop all the wrong people from approaching, but it will make it easier to walk away without second-guessing. You'll see the red flags sooner. You'll recognize manipulation quicker. You'll stop wasting years trying to turn broken potential into commitment. You'll reclaim your time, your peace, your energy, and the respect you were looking for in other people. You'll find it in yourself. The moment you raise your standards and truly enforce them, everything shifts. Your conversations change. Your relationships change. Your self-image transforms. You stop being a woman who hopes she's enough and become the woman who knows she is. You start walking with a presence that says, I choose me. Not in arrogance, in truth, in self-protection, in alignment. And when you do that, people either rise to meet you or they remove themselves. And both outcomes are a blessing. So don't ever apologize for holding your ground. Don't shrink to fit into someone's shallow version of love. Don't mistake loneliness for weakness. Some seasons alone are the greatest preparation for everything you've ever deserved. Because the moment you stop negotiating with your worth, the right people stop negotiating with your value. And that is when respect is no longer a request. It becomes a reflex. It becomes automatic. It becomes who you are. Saying no without guilt is one of the most powerful things you'll ever learn to do. It's also one of the hardest. Especially if you've been conditioned to believe that your value comes from how much you do for others, how agreeable you are, how much you can tolerate before breaking. But let's be real, constantly saying yes when you want to say no isn't kindness, it's fear. It's fear of rejection, fear of disappointing someone, fear of losing a connection. And that fear, it will keep you small, it will keep you exhausted, it will keep you in situations where you are being used, not valued. You want to see if a man truly respects you. Say no to something he wants. Watch what happens. Watch how he responds when he doesn't get his way. Does he throw a silent tantrum? Does he punish you emotionally? Does he try to wear you down until you fold? Or does he pause, respect your boundary, and adjust? That moment is where the truth comes out. Not in what he says when you agree, but in how he behaves when you don't. No is a complete sentence. It doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need a long explanation or an apology at the end. When you say no with confidence, with calmness, with self-respect, you're not pushing people away. You're drawing the line that protects everything you've worked so hard to build. And a man with depth, a man with character, a man with real respect, he won't be intimidated by your no. He'll be impressed by it. Because it tells him you're not here to please. You're here to protect your peace. Too many women say yes out of fear, then build quiet resentment under the surface. That resentment doesn't just poison the relationship. It poisons your self-worth. You start questioning yourself. You start feeling used, and the worst part, you blame yourself for not standing your ground. But that ends the moment you realize that your no is not rejection. It's redirection. It's clarity. It's the boundary that makes space for better things to come into your life. When you master the art of saying no without guilt, you stop trying to be everything for everyone. And you start being whole for yourself. You don't bend to avoid discomfort. You stand up to preserve alignment. and people begin to realize that your boundaries are not suggestions, they are standards. Men, especially, will test that. Not always maliciously. But they will. They'll see what you allow. And if you can't say no with strength, you'll end up in situations where your needs are always on the back burner. But when you say no and mean it, when you hold boundary with grace and unwavering energy, you become untouchable in the best way. You teach people how to engage with you. You show them that your yes is valuable because your no is real. And that's where respect lives. Not in how agreeable you are, but in how much you honor yourself even when it's uncomfortable. You don't need to explain your worth. You need to embody it. There's a difference. Talking about your value, your strength, your boundaries. Anyone can do that. But living it, showing it through the way you move, the way you carry yourself, the way you walk away from what doesn't serve you. That's what commands respect. Men don't respond to words the same way they respond to energy. You can say all day long that you deserve better, but if you keep entertaining men who treat you like an option, your actions speak louder than your affirmations ever will. You want to be respected. Then stop announcing your standards and start being the standard. Don't tell him you're not like other women. Show him through the way you enforce your boundaries, the way you choose yourself even when it's difficult, the way you refuse to chase, beg, or prove your worth to anyone. Your presence should speak before your mouth does. When a woman walks into a room knowing who she is, knowing what she brings, knowing what she won't tolerate, she doesn't need to prove anything. Men feel that. They feel the stillness, the confidence, the unshakable energy of someone who isn't performing for approval. And that alone is powerful. But too often, we fall into this trap, thinking if we just explain enough, if we make them understand our pain, our story, our value, then they'll treat us better. That's not how it works. You don't convince someone to respect you. You show them through the way you live, through the way you walk away from anything that's misaligned. If they can't see your value, that's not your job to fix. It's their limitation, not your lack. You're not here to argue for your worth. You're not here to negotiate your standards. You're here to live in full alignment with the woman you claim to be. That means no more entertaining half-effort. No more explaining your boundaries to someone who keeps testing them. No more justifying your decisions to people who never bothered to understand your values. You rise, you lead, and you let your consistency speak louder than your voice ever could. When you embody your worth, you stop settling for words. You start watching behavior. You stop waiting to be chosen. You start choosing yourself. And the men around you, whether they're strangers, co-workers, they adjust. Because energy doesn't lie. The woman who respects herself doesn't need to demand respect. She becomes the kind of woman who makes people question their own standards just by being in her presence. She is the message. When someone keeps testing your boundaries, they're not confused, they're calculating. The first time someone crosses the line, it could be a mistake. But the second, the third, the fourth, that's not forgetfulness. That's a pattern. That's someone watching to see how far they can push you before you push back. And every time you give a little more grace, a little more benefit of the doubt, a little more, maybe they didn't mean it. You're not being understanding, you're being studied. They're learning that your no doesn't actually mean no, that your standards are flexible, that they can disrespect you and still keep their access. Let me tell you something that's going to sting a little. People treat you based on what you tolerate. Not what you say, not what you hope for, but what you allow. If someone repeatedly disrespects your time, your space, your feelings, and you keep letting them come back with no real consequence, you're training them. You're teaching them that your boundaries are more like suggestions than requirements. And men pick up on this fast. The moment you hesitate, the moment you excuse the behavior, the moment you let it slide, just this once, they know, and if they're not the right kind of man, they'll keep doing it. You want to earn real respect, then you have to be willing to walk away, not slam the door in a storm of anger, quietly, clearly, confidently. When someone repeatedly shows you who they are, stop rewriting the script. Stop hoping they'll magically evolve into the version you built in your head. If they were capable of honoring your boundaries, they would have done it by now. And if they're not, Your silence, your distance, your exit. That's your message. That's how you protect your peace. You don't owe endless explanations to people who keep testing your limits. You owe yourself the kind of life where you're surrounded by people who don't need constant reminders of how to treat you. And that starts with walking away from those who already know what they're doing, but choose to do it anyway. Respect begins with how you treat yourself. Not how others speak to you, not how they show up. It begins the moment you decide you're done betraying your own intuition just to make other people comfortable. You can't expect a man to honor your boundaries when you keep breaking them yourself. You can't demand loyalty when you tolerate inconsistency. You can't talk about self-worth when you ignore every red flag for the sake of being liked. Respect isn't something you attract from the outside. It's something you build from the inside. It starts with the way you talk to yourself, the standards you set for your life, and the decisions you make when no one's watching. If you constantly dismiss your own needs, apologize for having feelings, or keep overextending just to keep the peace, you're teaching yourself that your comfort doesn't matter. And when you internalize that message, so will everyone else. They'll assume it's okay to interrupt you, overstep you, disregard you, because that's how you treat you. But the moment you decide, I matter, everything shifts. Your energy changes, your posture changes. You stop showing up to be accepted, and you start showing up to honor yourself. And that's when people begin to shift how they respond to you. Not because you asked them to, but because they can feel that you won't accept less. You have to set the tone. If you let disrespect slide once, even if it's subtle, you teach the world that your boundaries are flexible. But when you move like someone who protects their peace, who values their time, who doesn't perform for validation, that presence commands something deeper than attention. It commands respect. Because now people know there's a standard. There's a level. And if they want access to you, they've got to rise. Respecting yourself doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you're unapproachable. It means you love yourself enough to be selective about what you allow into your life. You understand that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. You're not afraid to eat alone if it means protecting your soul. And men, real men, don't get scared off by that. They get inspired by it. Because when you treat yourself with value, they either match it, or they exit. Either way you win. Boundaries are not rejection, they're protection. They're not about pushing people away. They're about protecting the version of you that you've fought to become. The healed version. The strong version. The woman who knows what she's worth and refuses to let the wrong people sabotage it again. But the moment you set a boundary, people will test you. They'll call you difficult. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of building walls. And that's because people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always see your growth as a threat, not a move toward peace. You have to understand this. Boundaries are not punishment. They are filters. They separate what deserves to stay from what must go. And the people who belong in your life will respect them without needing constant reminders. They won't try to twist your lines into loopholes. They won't ask, why not? Every time you say no, they'll adjust, they'll rise, because people who respect themselves respect the boundaries of others. That's just how it works. A man who truly values you will never be offended by the lines you draw. He'll be grateful for them, because they show him that you value yourself, that you have a clear sense of who you are, that you're not desperate for approval or scared of being alone. Boundaries tell peopling, this is how I love, this is how I live, and this is what I will not accept. They create structure, they create clarity, and most of all, they create safety. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. Too many women avoid setting boundaries because they're afraid of being abandoned. But here's the truthing people who leave when you enforce boundaries were never meant to stay. Let them go. Let the boundary do its job. Let it reveal who's real and who's just there for convenience. You're not here to carry people who refuse to walk. You're not here to fix, to shrink, to bend, or to babysit grown adults who refuse to respect your life. You're here to grow, to build, to evolve. And your boundaries are the gates that make that possible. So stop fearing that boundaries will make you lose people. The only ones you'll lose are the ones who were never safe to begin with. And the ones who stay, they'll stay because they see you. They value you. They understand that the woman who protects her peace is the woman who commands respect without having to ask for it. Because when you stop compromising your standards just to keep people comfortable, you stop attracting confusion and start attracting clarity. And in that clarity, you'll find the relationships, the respect, and the power you were never willing to settle for again. Respect isn't something you beg for, chase, or negotiate. It's something you become. When you set boundaries rooted in self-worth, when you say no without guilt, when you stop explaining your standards and start living by them, you transform how the world responds to you, not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. The truth is, people will treat you exactly how you teach them to. So the question is, what are you teaching them? Are you teaching them that you can be tested, bent, tolerated, or ignored? Or are you teaching them that your time, your body, your energy, your values, they come with limits that must be honored? You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be aligned, grounded, clear, and powerful in who you are. And when you protect that, you don't just earn respect from men. You earn it from the world, and most importantly, from yourself.